Japan has a public face. The trains, the toilets, the vending machines, the politeness. The things the world knows about and talks about and makes YouTube videos about. Then there is the other layer. The systems running quietly underneath the visible one. The agreements nobody wrote down. The industries with no signage. The traditions practiced by people who never mention them because mentioning them would defeat the purpose entirely. Here are 24 Japanese ideas so secret that even most Japanese don't know about them. Kigumi, buildings that hold together without a single nail. Here's a sentence that should not be true. Some of the oldest standing wooden structures on Earth were built without nails, screws, glue, or metal fasteners of any kind, and they have survived over 1,000 years of earthquakes. The technique is called Kigumi, the traditional Japanese art of interlocking wood joinery. Instead of fastening pieces together, craftsmen carve the ends of timber into precise interlocking shapes, three-dimensional puzzles that slide together and lock under their own geometry. Japan sits on 4 tectonic plates. Rigid nailed structures fight seismic energy and snap. Kigumi structures absorb and disperse it. The joints flex slightly during a quake, then settle back. Horyuji Temple in Nara, built in the 7th century using these techniques, is the oldest surviving wooden structure on Earth. UNESCO recognized Kigumi as intangible cultural heritage. They solved the nail before the nail existed, and the buildings are still standing. Electricity, generating pavements, the floor that charges itself. In 2008, a Japanese company called Sound Power installed piezoelectric floor tiles at Shibuya Station, tiles that convert the pressure of a footstep into an electrical charge. Every step taken produces a small current. In a location where millions of people walk daily, small multiplies into something real. The tiles at Tokyo Station now power LED information boards and station lighting. Narita Airport's piezoelectric walkways generate electricity for signage. Japan took a 19th century laboratory observation about crystals generating voltage under pressure and put it under commuters' feet. The people walking through the building are the building's power source. Tachigui, they removed the chair and made lunch faster. Tachigui, standing eating, is a dining format that has existed in Japan for centuries and makes complete sense the moment you think about it. No chairs. You stand, you eat, you leave. Standing ramen bars, soba stalls, and sushi counters operate this way across Japan, particularly near train stations. What Tachigui solved is the problem of the meal that takes longer than the hunger. Tachigui eliminates every wait except the eating. Walk in, order, receive food in seconds, eat standing at the counter, pay, leave. The whole transaction completes in 8 minutes. The format doesn't signal low quality. It signals respect for the fact that sometimes you are hungry, you have 20 minutes, and you'd like to solve the problem and get on with your day. Self-foaming canned beer. The can that pours its own head. Japanese beer culture treats the foam head as functional, not decorative. It seals the beer, slows oxidation, and moderates carbonation release, producing a smoother drink. The problem is that canned beer rarely produces a proper head without a trained pour. Kirin solved this in 2009 with a capsule of pressurized nitrogen embedded at the base of the can. Pull the tab, the capsule is pierced, nitrogen expands upward through the beer, and a dense, fine-bubbled foam head rises to the top on its own. No pour, no tilt, no technique required. You open it, and it produces a draft-quality head, exactly as from a tap. Suntory followed with their own version. Vein Finder Medical Devices. The machine that sees through your skin. Finding a vein for an IV or blood draw is genuinely difficult for a significant portion of patients. Elderly people, children, anyone with narrow or deep veins. Multiple needle attempts cause pain, bruising, and anxiety. It's one of the most common sources of distress in routine medical settings. Japanese medical device engineers developed handheld vein visualization devices that project near-infrared light onto skin. Hemoglobin absorbs infrared at a different rate than surrounding tissue. making veins appear as dark lines. A processor converts this contrast in real time and projects a live map of the vein network directly back onto the patient's skin, aligned with millimeter precision. The nurse sees exactly where the vein is before the needle moves. Film tape, highlighters. They replaced ink with physics. The standard highlighter bleeds through thin paper, smears on fresh ink, creates a muddy mess over a previous highlight, and cannot be undone. Japan fixed all of those problems simultaneously without changing what a highlighter is. The film tape highlighter, from companies like King Jim and Kokuyo, uses a roll of semi-transparent colored film instead of ink. Roll it across text, and a thin physical film adheres lightly to the surface. No smearing, no bleed-through, no ink drying out, no cap to lose. And critically, it peels back off cleanly if you highlighted the wrong line. That's the move Japan makes repeatedly. Not reinventing, just completing. Anti-hangover drinks sold next to the alcohol. Japan produces functional beverages specifically formulated to prevent or reduce hangover symptoms, and sells them at every convenience store, in the section right next to the beer and spirits. The most prominent, Ukon no Chikara by House Foods, contains concentrated turmeric extract with documented effects on alcohol metabolism, specifically the liver's processing of acetaldehyde, the compound primarily responsible for hangover symptoms. It's taken before or during drinking and has been available at Japanese konbini for decades. Connecting calendar stamp tool. One stamp fills a week. This is a rubber stamp that produces an unreasonable amount of satisfaction. The Midori paintable stamp is a rolling or hinge stamp that prints a continuous, connectable calendar grid onto any paper. Each press produces a week of dated boxes that align seamlessly with the previous press. Stamp again, flush with the first, and you have 2 weeks, perfectly aligned, looking printed rather than stamped. Any length, any time period, on any notebook page, in seconds. No printing, no pre-formatted planner required. The connecting calendar stamp doesn't just work. It works in a way that's tactilely rewarding enough that people choose it over a printed planner they already paid for. It is a rubber stamp. And it is, inexplicably, one of the most elegant planning tools ever made. Orange juice served inside a real orange. At premium juice bars and department store food halls across Japan, fresh squeezed orange juice arrives not in a cup, but inside the orange itself. The fruit is cut, juiced internally, and presented with the top as a lid. You receive what appears to be an orange. You drink fresh juice from it. The packaging is the product. No cup, no lid, no straw required. Japan treats presentation as an inseparable component of the product itself. The juice isn't better because it's in an orange, but the experience of having juice is different, and that difference is real. The idea is so simple it borders on obvious. The global juice industry still hasn't adopted it at scale. Sushi plate disposal reward system. At chains like Kurasushi and Sushiro, when you finish a plate, you slot it into a small chute in the table. The restaurant tracks your consumption and bills automatically. That much is practical. But then the layer on top kicks in. Every 5 plates inserted triggers an on-table screen game. Every 15 plates triggers a reward. Certain counts unlock small prizes. A capsule toy, a voucher, a bonus item. The system turns plate disposal, a chore in every other restaurant format, into the mechanic of a game. You are being mildly rewarded for clearing your own table. Cane that converts into a portable seat. Japan has the world's oldest population by median age. Over 30% of the country is over 65. The product design culture that's grown around this demographic is sophisticated in a way no other country has needed to match. The seat cane converts from walking support to stable stool in a single motion without tools, and folds back with equal simplicity. Light enough to carry all day without fatigue, stable enough to sit on safely, and visually unobtrusive enough that people actually use it rather than leave it home out of vanity. That last detail is the real design insight, not the mechanism. Japan built a product that eliminates it, made it well, and placed it in mainstream retail rather than medical supply stores only. Japan designs for how people actually age. Most of the world doesn't. Diatomaceous earth bath mat. The floor that dries itself. A bath mat's job is to absorb water and dry your feet. The average fabric mat does the first half. It absorbs water, then becomes wet itself, stays wet for hours, and accumulates mold and bacteria in its fibers, if not laundered regularly. The Japanese diatomaceous earth bath mat, produced by companies like Soil using local diatomite from Akita Prefecture, does the other half. Diatomaceous earth is a naturally occurring mineral made from fossilized microscopic organisms, pure silica riddled with millions of pores. It holds up to 150% of its own weight in water and evaporates it almost instantly. Step on it wet. The surface is dry within minutes. No mold, no smell, no laundering. Refreshed by light sanding every few months. It is made of fossil dirt, and it outperforms every fabric mat ever produced on every functional metric. Japan made a better bath mat out of the ground. Coffee in edible waffle cones. At certain coffee stalls across Japan, your espresso arrives in a small waffle cone. The inside is coated with chocolate, acting simultaneously as a flavor layer and a waterproof seal, preventing the hot liquid from soaking through until you're ready to eat it. You drink your coffee. Then you eat the cup. No disposable cup, no lid, no sleeve, no waste. The vessel contributes to the experience, then disappears into you. The presentation is striking enough to be consistently photographed, and the taste of espresso followed immediately by warm chocolate-lined waffle is objectively good. It works best at espresso sizes. Japan's solution to this is to simply serve more espresso-sized drinks, which is arguably a separate improvement. The only reason every espresso bar in the world hasn't adopted this is that they haven't thought hard enough about the cup. Solo diner. Friendly restaurants. In most countries, eating alone in a restaurant is socially tolerated at best and structurally awkward at worst. Two-person tables dominate. The solo seat at the bar is the afterthought. Japan engineered the solo dining experience as a first-class product category. Ichiran Ramen places individual diners in their own partitioned wooden booth, separated from neighbors by a divider, from the kitchen by a bamboo screen that raises when your bowl is ready. You select your broth preferences on a paper form. The bowl appears. You eat entirely alone, without interaction, without ambient awareness of dining solo in public. Beyond Ichiran, Japan has an entire ecosystem of solo format counters and restaurant layouts that treat the individual as the base unit of dining rather than the couple or the group. This isn't antisocial. It is the recognition that a person eating alone deserves the same quality of experience as anyone else, which is both a design statement and a cultural one simultaneously. Self-sealing. Jam jar lids. The standard jam jar lid has a problem most people have accepted so completely they've forgotten it's a problem. It doesn't reliably create an airtight seal on the second close. Over-tighten it and you can't open it next time. Under-tighten and the jam dries around the rim. The seal is manual, approximate, and user-dependent. Japanese food packaging, particularly from companies like Aohara, uses resealable designs that create a positive seal without requiring precise torque. Some versions use a center-to-press mechanism. When sealed, the lid center is concave, confirming vacuum. You close the lid. It seals. You do not have to think about whether it's sealed. This is the difference between a product that works and a product you have to work with. Japan, as a consistent cultural priority, prefers the former, applied across soy sauce caps, beverage bottles, and condiment containers, with the same level of care. Paper-based disposable razors. Kai Group developed a razor with a handle made from dense compressed paper composite, sufficient rigidity and grip for a single shave, after which the entire unit can be recycled in paper streams rather than sent to landfill as mixed plastic waste. The blade is still metal because there is no paper blade that shaves a face, but the bulk of plastic in a conventional disposable razor is replaced with paper pulp, cutting plastic content by roughly 60% while maintaining identical functional performance. No price premium. No degraded feel in the hand, no trade-off of any kind. There is only less plastic in a landfill. Billions of plastic disposable razors are discarded globally each year, almost universally non-recyclable. The reason the paper version isn't universal has nothing to do with the engineering, and everything to do with whether anyone bothered to try. Portable paper soap sheets. A credit card-sized booklet containing thin sheets of paper that dissolve in water and foam into soap lather. Each sheet weighs almost nothing. The booklet fits in a wallet. Japanese companies have sold these for decades. They're standard items in Japanese emergency preparedness kits. In a post-earthquake context, portable sanitation becomes immediately critical, and soap packets take up space and can spill. Paper soap sheets have compressed a liquid product into a dry format with no functional loss. The soap works. It lathers. It rinses clean. No bottle to run out of. No pump to fail. No liquid to spill. The international reaction when people discover them is always the same. Why didn't I know about this? And why is this not everywhere? Storm prevention and response centers. Japan's disaster response infrastructure is not a crisis reaction mechanism. It is treated as permanent standing infrastructure, designed with the same rigor as hospitals and transit systems. The country operates dedicated disaster response centers, not repurposed offices, but facilities specifically built, staffed, and equipped for emergency coordination. The Japan Meteorological Agency issues typhoon warnings 72 hours in advance. Municipal emergency centers activate in tiered stages with pre-assigned roles for every staff member. No decisions need to be made in the moment, because all decisions were made in the drill. The J-Alert system can push an earthquake warning to every mobile phone in the country within seconds of detection, fast enough that people receive the alert before the shaking reaches them. Japan loses fewer lives to catastrophic earthquakes and typhoons than other countries experience in smaller events, because the infrastructure for response was built before the emergency rather than improvised during it. The idea: treat disaster preparation as engineering, not as planning. Bottom up. Beer tornado dispenser. The tornado beer server fills a pint glass from the bottom up. The glass has a small magnet-sealed hole in its base. Place it on the dispenser, the base opens onto the filling nozzle, and beer fills upward from below. No pour, no tilt, no angle management. When full, lift the glass off. The magnetic valve closes automatically, sealing the hole completely. A perfectly poured glass with a controlled, consistent head, filled in a fraction of the time of a conventional pour, requiring zero skill. Every variable that makes conventional pouring inconsistent is eliminated. The beer fills from the bottom, rises to the top, and the hole stops existing when you pick it up. You are holding a normal glass of beer that was filled from a direction beer was not previously fillable from. It is not a magic trick. It is the engineering answer to the problem that filling from the top is inherently imprecise, and a valve in the base was the better approach. Curved and spiral escalators. In 1985, Mitsubishi Electric unveiled the world's first practical spiral escalator, an escalator that curves continuously while carrying people. This is an object that should not work. An escalator requires a continuous loop of steps, each remaining perfectly level as the incline rises. On a straight escalator, that geometry is already a precise mechanical achievement. On a curve, every step must independently compensate for its changing angle relative to the spiral's radius, maintaining a level surface throughout a path that is simultaneously rising and turning. Mitsubishi solved this with steps of independently adjustable widths, each slightly wedge-shaped, adjusting its angle through the arc. The reason isn't aesthetic. Curved escalators allow buildings to design floor layouts that a straight escalator would interrupt. The spiral becomes an architectural element rather than an intrusion, something that looks like the building grew it. Mitsubishi built curved escalators because a straight one forces the building to design around the machine. A curved one lets the building design around itself. Chocolate slices like cheese slices. In Japan, Meiji and other manufacturers produce chocolate in individually wrapped flat slices, formatted identically to processed cheese slices. Same peel-apart wrapper, same refrigerator stacking, same handling window before melting. The format solves several chocolate problems at once. Portioning. Each slice is a defined serving. Storage. Flat stacks take up predictable space. Sharing. Individual slices distribute without crumbling. Melting. The thin, flat format integrates into food. Sandwiches, pastries, crepes, the same way cheese does. Japanese convenience store hot food sections use these slices in toasted items for exactly this reason. Meiji looked at cheese's format and asked whether chocolate's format should match. It should. It does. This is either the most obvious idea in confectionery history, or a genuinely new thought that somehow didn't happen anywhere else first. Possibly both. Mini desktop vacuums. The eraser crumb is the kind of problem most of the world quietly ignores. It's small, harmless, easy to brush aside. Japan looked at it and decided even that deserved a proper solution. So they built one. Japanese stationery makers created miniature desktop vacuum cleaners designed specifically for the scale of a desk. These aren't gimmicks. They're compact, fully functional devices, USB or battery-powered, with real suction, a tiny dust chamber, and a proper filter. You run it across your desk once, and the eraser debris, pencil shavings, paper dust, even stray crumbs disappear. No brushing things onto the floor. No wiping them into your palm and wondering where to put them. It's clean in seconds. Then the device goes back to its place beside your pen holder, ready for the next small mess. It costs about as much as a decent pen. That's part of the point. This level of refinement isn't reserved for luxury. It's built into the everyday. In Japan, the stationery industry treats every minor friction in desk work as something worth redesigning. Film tape highlighters replace ink with transparent strips that don't bleed or smear. Connecting calendar stamps turn a blank page into a structured planner in a single press. Each tool removes a tiny inconvenience so completely that you stop thinking about it altogether. Individually, these problems are trivial. Together, they shape the experience of working. That's what makes the mini vacuum so telling. It doesn't just clean crumbs. It represents a standard where even crumbs are considered part of the design problem, and therefore, part of the solution. The mandatory fruit juice content. Labeling law? This one doesn't come in a box or sit on a shelf. It doesn't hum, fold, click, or dispense anything. It's quieter than that. It's a rule, and a remarkably sharp one. In Japan, any drink that contains fruit juice must clearly state the exact percentage of juice on the front of the package. Not tucked into microscopic ingredient lists, not disguised behind poetic branding, just a number sitting in plain sight. You glance once, and the truth is already there. 5% means 5%. 100% means exactly that. No clever phrasing, no lush illustrations of fruit doing the heavy lifting for what's essentially flavored sugar water. The label and the liquid agree with each other. Contrast that with places where a drink can wear the costume of fruit, bright colors, tropical names, orchard imagery, while the actual fruit content hides in fine print like a footnote no one reads. Japan looked at that gap between appearance and reality and closed it with a single requirement. No drama, no complexity. Just clarity, and once you experience that kind of clarity, it's hard not to miss it everywhere else. The nail-free wood joinery. Toy Kigumi in your hands. We began with Kigumi as something monumental. Wooden temples standing for over 1,000 years, held together without a single nail. Now shrink that idea down until it fits in your palm, and something quietly magical happens. Enter kumiki. Intricate wooden puzzles built from interlocking pieces that rely on the same geometric principles as traditional Japanese joinery. These are not ordinary puzzles. There are no instructions folded into the box, no diagrams to decode. Each piece is shaped with such precision that it only fits in one place, one way. The solution is not forced. It reveals itself. You don't solve the puzzle so much as discover how it wants to come together. The forms vary. Spheres that bloom outward, cubes that lock with satisfying finality, stars that seem impossible until suddenly they aren't. The experience feels less like problem solving and more like unlocking a quiet secret hidden in the wood. Every successful assembly carries a small spark of realization. So that's how it works. These puzzles trace back to the Edo period, where craftsmanship and play were never far apart. Today, they sit in craft stores, museum gift shops, and curious hands across Japan, bridging centuries of knowledge with a simple, tactile experience. What makes this idea extraordinary is not just the design, but the translation. A structural system capable of holding buildings through earthquakes has been miniaturized into something anyone can hold, turn, and understand. No tools, no training, no failure required. It's engineering, yes. It's art, certainly. But more than anything, it's an invitation, a way to feel, quite literally, how centuries of wisdom fit together. The glass that fills itself from the bottom. At certain Japanese bars, you place an empty glass on a pressurized platform. Beer rises through a valve in the base, filling upward from below. Foam forms naturally at the top where it belongs. When the glass is full, you lift it. The valve seals itself on removal. Not a drop spills. The physics behind this are simply better than conventional pouring. When beer falls into a glass from above, the impact forces carbonation out of solution aggressively, producing excess foam and reducing the liquid ratio. Filling from below allows the beer to rise with minimal agitation, preserving carbonation and producing a consistent, precise pour with no trained technique required from the operator. Japan applied engineering to the specific moment of the pour and found that the moment had been done wrong for centuries. The beer didn't change. The direction it travels changed. The result is measurably better. Japan noticed the physics were wrong, corrected them, and moved on. The parking tower that retrieves your car in 13 seconds. In Tokyo and Osaka, where land costs make surface parking economically absurd, automated towers store cars vertically across 15 or more floors. The process is straightforward. You drive onto a ground-level platform, step out, and walk away. A carousel and elevator system takes the car, locates an available bay, and parks it without a human touching it. To retrieve the vehicle, you insert your ticket. The tower locates your specific car, rotates the carousel, aligns the elevator, and delivers it to ground level facing the exit direction in under 2 minutes. You never enter the building. You never navigate a ramp or search a level. The car comes to you. The same footprint that parks one car at surface level parks 40 in a tower. Japan ran out of horizontal space, looked upward, and built a machine to manage what gravity alone could not. The driver stands outside and waits 13 seconds. Most people spend longer finding a button in a standard elevator. The road that melts its own snow. Niigata Prefecture receives some of the heaviest snowfall of any inhabited region on Earth. Its roads do not need plowing. They melt their own snow using a pipe network embedded beneath the asphalt through which groundwater circulates continuously during winter. Groundwater in Japan maintains a stable temperature of 12 to 15 degrees Celsius year-round, well above freezing. Pumped through pipes beneath the road surface, this water keeps the asphalt just warm enough that falling snow melts on contact before it accumulates. No salt trucks. No overnight crews, no corroded infrastructure from years of chemical treatment, no contaminated runoff entering local waterways. The system has operated in Niigata since the 1960s. Japan looked at cold climate infrastructure's most disruptive seasonal problem and found the solution sitting directly underground. It needed only pipes to connect them. The road has been managing winter passively for 60 years, while most cold climate cities are still paying people to drive in circles with salt. The vending machine that gives away food during earthquakes.
For the next week, I'm living on the best 20 vending machines in Tokyo, Japan, starting with number 20 of the 7-Eleven vending machine, with having different types of sandwiches and even hot meal.
Japan has around 5 million vending machines, many designed to switch into emergency mode. When earthquakes strike, selected units detect seismic activity or receive signals to release their contents for free. In disaster moments, when stores close and supply chains fail, these machines become instant relief points. They run on backup power and are already distributed across cities, stocked with water, food, and hot drinks. Japan didn't build separate emergency infrastructure, it upgraded what already existed. The same machines used daily transform into a decentralized support system, providing immediate access to essentials when traditional systems are disrupted. The machine that sanitizes library books. In 30 seconds, library books pass through hundreds of hands. They travel on public transport, sit on floors, and are handled during meals. The pages accumulate bacteria, particulate matter, and general contamination that the standard return process does nothing about. Most library systems have accepted this as unavoidable. Japanese public libraries installed ultraviolet sanitizing machines at return desks. A returned book is placed inside, the pages are rapidly aerated in front of UV light, and within 30 seconds, the interior surfaces are sanitized. No heat, no moisture, no chemicals that would damage paper or binding. The book returns to the shelf in measurably cleaner condition than it arrived. 30 seconds per book. A hygiene reality present in every lending library on Earth and acknowledged by almost none of them. Japan decided it wasn't unavoidable, which it turns out it wasn't. It just required someone to build the machine and the decision to install it. Both took less time than the problem had been running unchecked. The underground carousel that swallows your bicycle. A circular platform sits flush with the pavement. You roll your bike on, tap a card, and step back. In seconds, the eco-cycle takes it underground into a rotating storage drum. It disappears completely. Retrieval is just as fast. Your exact bike returns in seconds. Built for dense cities, it stores hundreds of bicycles beneath a 1-meter surface footprint. No clutter, no theft, no space lost. Instead of expanding racks, Japan moved the entire system underground, automated it, and returned the street above to pedestrians. The needle that shows you the vein before it enters. Drawing blood in patients with hard-to-find veins often leads to multiple attempts and discomfort. Japan addressed this with near-infrared vein imaging devices that make veins visible before insertion. The device projects infrared light onto the skin, and because hemoglobin absorbs it differently, a real-time map of veins appears directly on the surface. Clinicians can see exactly where to insert the needle, improving first-attempt success and reducing stress for both patient and provider. Japan treated the issue not as a skill limitation, but as a visibility problem. By revealing what was hidden, it transformed a routine but difficult procedure into a far more precise and comfortable experience. The luggage that arrives before you do. Japan's nationwide luggage forwarding service, Tachigui, removes the burden of carrying bags while traveling. Through Yamato Transport, you can drop luggage at hotels, airports, or convenience stores, and it arrives at your next destination, often the same day or by morning. With precise tracking and thousands of access points, the system is reliable and widely used. Travelers move freely through stations, stairs, and crowded streets without baggage. Instead of improving luggage itself, Japan eliminated the need to carry it. The responsibility shifts from the individual to the network, which handles it more efficiently. The sliding wall that predates every open-plan office by centuries. Traditional Japanese interiors use fusuma, sliding panels made of wood and paper that divide space without consuming it. Unlike hinge doors, they don't need clearance and can be removed to merge rooms instantly. A space can shift from private to open in seconds, then back again. This principle underlies modern flexible design, sliding partitions, folding walls, and open-plan layouts. Japan built it into homes over 1,000 years ago. The idea is simple. A wall should exist only when needed. When it isn't, it should disappear. Japan normalized this concept so completely that it became invisible, while the rest of the world continues to rediscover it as innovation. The salon chair that fixed the part everyone hated. The typical salon shampoo requires awkward neck craning over a basin and accepted discomfort in most places. Japanese salons redesigned this with a head spa arch, a padded, contoured support that keeps the head and neck in a natural, relaxed position. Clients recline fully, with no strain, allowing the wash to feel genuinely calming rather than tolerable. What was once a minor inconvenience becomes a comfortable, extended experience. The change is simple but deliberate. Japan identified an unnecessary discomfort and removed it. No advanced technology, just attention to how something feels, and the decision that it should feel better. The professional whose entire job is your ears. In Japan, there are businesses whose complete and entire service is ear cleaning. You arrive, recline, rest your head in the practitioner's lap, and undergo a 20 to 40-minute session in which your ears are professionally cleaned using small bamboo scoops, cotton spirals, and fine brushes, while receiving a scalp massage simultaneously. This is not a medical procedure. It is a grooming and relaxation service with centuries of history in Japanese domestic culture, where cleaning a family member's ears was an act of intimate care. The commercial parlor formalizes that intimacy as a bookable wellness appointment. Clients return regularly. The experience is described consistently as deeply calming in a way that resists full explanation until it has been experienced. Japan identified a personal care need that the rest of the world left commercially unaddressed, possibly because the proximity required felt awkward to formalize, and made it a legitimate industry with trained practitioners and loyal repeat clientele. The awkwardness was the only barrier. Japan removed it. The platform door that made the rail unsafe to reach. In most metro systems, the platform edge is an unguarded drop to electrified rails. A stumble, a moment of inattention, or an accidental push is the complete distance between a passenger and a fatal outcome. Safety lines are painted on the floor. Announcements are made. Incidents still happen. Japan's modern metro stations install full-height screen doors along the entire platform edge, a continuous sealed barrier between waiting passengers and the track, opening only when a train arrives and its doors align precisely with the screen panels. When no train is present, the barrier is sealed. The fall to the rail does not exist as an accessible hazard. An entire category of incident is eliminated. Dropped items cannot land on live rails. Climate control becomes possible since the platform is now sealed from the tunnel environment. Safety and energy efficiency from a single decision. Japan built it in as standard for new stations. Other metro systems are retrofitting it at significant expense. The logic was always there. The door just needed to be built. The weighing scale that moves information to when it's useful. Standard airport check-in produces a consistent and predictable pressure point. You reach the desk, lift your bag onto the scale, discover it is overweight, and manage a public negotiation about fees or frantic repacking while a queue waits directly behind you. The information arrives at the worst moment in the worst location. Japanese airports and hotel lobbies install floor-level scales in pre-check-in areas. The scale sits flush with the floor. You roll your bag directly onto it without lifting. The weight displays. You discover the problem, if there is one, before the queue, before the desk, before the social pressure, with space and time to solve it privately. The floor-level scale does not change what the information is. It changes when and where you receive it. Japan understands that the delivery point of information is as important as the information itself, and engineers both with equal care. The scale is a small thing. The principle it represents applies to almost every friction point in any organized system. The chocolate bar that became a map of a country. Japan produces over 300 regional and limited edition KitKat varieties, many exclusive to specific prefectures and available only through local shops and train station kiosks. Wasabi in Shizuoka, Hokkaido melon with cream cheese, matcha in Kyoto, purple sweet potato in Okinawa. The name KitKat sounds close to Kitokatsu. You will surely win, making it a culturally embedded examination gift. Nestlé Japan developed this in partnership with regional governments and local ingredient suppliers, converting a standardized global product into a hyper-local collectible functioning simultaneously as gift, souvenir, and regional cultural artifact. Travelers now route through specific prefectures to find varieties unavailable anywhere else. The product became a tourism driver. A commodity chocolate bar became a detailed map of Japan's regional identity, with each prefecture represented by flavor. Japan took a globally uniform product and made it express local specificity so precisely that people travel to find the right one. That is not marketing. That is a fundamental rethinking of what a chocolate bar is allowed to do. The tiny apartment that makes larger ones feel unfinished. Tokyo's housing density has produced residential units of 15 to 25 square meters, where every decision is load-bearing. Every wall serves a function. Every surface carries storage. Beds fold into walls. Fixtures are sized precisely to the space, rather than adapted from standard dimensions that assume more room. Nothing is approximate. Nothing is wasted. The result consistently surprises people encountering these spaces for the first time. A well-designed Tokyo micro-apartment often feels more functional than a Western apartment twice its size, because the larger apartment contains loosely purposed zones and dead square footage, while the micro-apartment cannot afford either. Constraint produced precision. The design intelligence that emerges from extreme space limitation, multi-function furniture, vertical storage, modular organization is transferable regardless of floor area. Japan generates it out of necessity. The rest of the world borrows it because it works even when the necessity is removed. Japan was forced into the best version of residential design by a real estate market that left no alternative. The capsule toy machine that contains actual art. Gachapon, Japan's capsule vending machines, are understood internationally as novelty toy dispensers for children. This understanding is approximately 30 years out of date. Insert a coin, turn a handle, receive a plastic capsule. That is still the mechanism. What the capsule contains has become something else entirely. Japanese manufacturers, including Bandai and Kyoto, now produce capsule series with the material quality of display collectibles. Anatomically detailed marine biology models. 1 to 12 scale miniature foods with individual textures rendered in resin. Fully articulated figures small enough to rest on a fingertip. Artists collaborate with manufacturers on limited series that sell out within hours. Secondary markets develop around rare capsule series. Collectors plan travel routes around machine locations. Japan decided that a low price point, a randomized outcome, and a miniature scale were interesting creative constraints rather than limiting ones, and asked a serious question. What do you make when it must be beautiful, fit in a capsule, and cost under $5? Japan has answered that question tens of thousands of times. The answers are frequently extraordinary. The stamp that lets you build your own calendar. Japanese stationery culture produced the connecting calendar stamp set, a series of self-inking stamps producing individual date components, day blocks, month headers, and time grids that interlock on paper to construct a custom planning layout from scratch. No pre-printed planner, no rigid template. You stamp the structure the specific week or project requires, and plan within what you built. Pre-printed planners impose a structure that may not fit the user's actual planning reality. Weekly grids assume a scale. Monthly layouts assume a rhythm. The stamp set allows the user to construct planning architecture from scratch at whatever scale the moment requires. Japan's stationery industry consistently treats every small friction in physical desk work as a legitimate design problem. The connecting stamp extends that principle to the container of planning itself, not just what tools are used within a plan, but what shape the plan should take. Most productivity tools give you a structure and tell you to adapt. Japan made a tool that adapts to you. The private space. Hiding inside every Japanese city, the Japanese manga cafe, Manga Kisa, is a private pod facility found across urban Japan. For an hourly fee, you access a small, enclosed personal booth with a reclining chair, computer, internet, and access to thousands of manga volumes. Shower facilities, a drink bar, light food, and blankets are included. You can stay an hour. You can stay 12. They are used by commuters who miss the last train, remote workers needing private space, travelers between flights, and people experiencing housing insecurity for whom a conventional room is financially out of reach. The Manga Cafe is a formal, affordable, dignified short-term private space in cities where hotel rooms are expensive and public space is relentlessly shared. Japan created a commercial product that incidentally functions as a social infrastructure layer, providing warmth, shelter, privacy, rest, and connectivity to anyone who needs it, on a pay-per-hour basis, accessible in every major urban area, with no bureaucratic process required to enter. It is a business that quietly does something much larger than being a business. The ice cream that eliminated the part where it falls apart. Traditional ice cream has a built-in flaw. Melting ruins the experience. Cones collapse, bars drip, cups need spoons and surrender to heat. Japan's squeezable ice cream pouch fixes only that problem. The sealed tube lets you push ice cream upward at your own pace. No dripping, no mess, no structural failure. You can pause and continue without consequence. It works in any weather. The ice cream itself hasn't changed. The container has. Japan often improves things this way, not by reinventing them, but by identifying the one part that doesn't work perfectly and redesigning just that piece. The family you can hire for any occasion. Companies like Family Romance employ actors who can be hired as family, friends, or partners. Clients rent a father for events, a companion for gatherings, or a stand-in relative when someone is gone. Actors prepare in advance and stay in character, sometimes across years of repeat engagements. These aren't extreme cases, but ordinary people navigating absence, loss, or distance. Japan identified an emotional gap and treated it as a service need. Whether it feels practical or unsettling depends on perspective, but the system persists because it works, providing presence where life has left space empty. The smoking room that satisfied both sides. Debates on indoor smoking usually split between allowing it or banning it. Japan engineered a third option. In airports, offices, and malls, designated smoking rooms are sealed, negatively pressured spaces with advanced filtration. Air flows inward, preventing smoke from escaping when doors open. Smokers use the space freely. Non-smokers nearby experience nothing. It's not a compromise where both sides lose something. It's a solution where both needs are met. Japan approached the conflict as an engineering problem, not a policy choice. Instead of picking a side, it redesigned the environment so opposing preferences could coexist without interference. The mascot that generates $1 billion for a single prefecture. Across Japan, nearly every public body has a mascot, known as a yuruchara. These characters range from charming to delightfully odd, yet they serve a clear purpose. Kumaman alone generates massive revenue through licensing, while Funashi turned a quiet suburb into a national name. They're simple designs, but highly effective. By giving institutions a recognizable face, Japan makes even bureaucratic systems feel approachable. It's not complex technology, it's identity design. Japan treats everyday interactions, even with government or agriculture, as experiences worth shaping. Sometimes, a drawing is enough to change how people connect with a place. The building that moves less than the ground beneath it. Japan sits on multiple tectonic plates, making earthquakes inevitable. Its most advanced defense isn't visible in the structure, but hidden beneath it. Base isolation systems use layered rubber and lead bearings between a building and the ground. When earthquakes strike, the ground moves while the building above experiences far less motion. Hospitals rely on this to stay functional during disasters. Decades of real-world testing have refined the technology, making Japan a global leader. Most people inside these buildings never notice the difference. The safety isn't obvious. It works quietly beneath them, reducing force, protecting structure, and keeping critical spaces operational when they are needed most. The building that disappears underground and holds 204 bicycles. Everything here shares one idea: questioning the ordinary. In Japan, the answer is often no. It doesn't have to work that way. problems aren't adjusted. They're redefined. The eco-cycle captures this perfectly. You roll your bike onto a small panel, tap a card, and it disappears underground into a compact automated system. Seconds later, it returns only to you. No clutter, no theft, no compromise. The street stays clear because the problem no longer exists on the surface. Japan doesn't manage inefficiency. It removes it, often invisibly, and restores space back to people. Emma. Ma is a Japanese concept for meaningful empty space. The pause, the gap, the silence between notes. In professional scheduling, it has a practical meaning most productivity culture elsewhere hasn't encountered, deliberately leaving time unbooked, not as a buffer, but as a functional component of the working day with its own purpose. A Japanese professional with a meeting at 10 and a meeting at 2 is not available between 10 and 2. That time isn't open. It belongs to the thinking that the 10 o'clock meeting generates, to the transition between modes of attention, to the work that can't happen while the next meeting is happening in the background of your head. Most calendar systems treat every unbooked slot as available. Ma says the gap is part of the structure. Japan has a word for it. The rest of the world's productivity apps still don't have a field for it. Senbetsu. Senbetsu is the practice of giving a traveler a cash gift before a significant trip. Not as an expense contribution, as an acknowledgement that travel costs money in ways you can't predict, and that the people who care about you want those unexpected costs to land softly. The traveler is expected to spend it. On return, they bring omiyage back, regional gifts from the places they visited, for the people who sent them off. The omiyage is supposed to reflect actual engagement with where you were. Japan made going somewhere a social contract with the people you left behind. The trip isn't just yours. It's a little bit everyone's. Hospital navigation desks. Large Japanese hospitals operate dedicated navigation desks staffed by volunteers whose only function is helping patients find where they're going. Not answering medical questions, not handling paperwork, walking people from the entrance to the correct department, waiting if needed, confirming they're in the right place, returning to the desk. It exists because confusion in large hospitals causes missed appointments and delayed treatment in ways that cost more to manage than a navigation desk costs to run. The volunteer pipeline is well supplied by retired community members who find the work meaningful and the hours flexible. Japan noticed hospital confusion was a solvable problem, put someone in charge of solving it, and it turned out to cost less than not doing that, which is usually how it goes with obvious solutions. Resting rooms. A growing number of Japanese companies have small, dedicated resting rooms on the office floor. Tatami flooring, low lighting, no screens, one purpose. Not a break room with a couch and a coffee machine. A room with floor space and a pillow for sleeping briefly during the working day. The research on short rest periods and afternoon cognitive function is consistent and decades old. Most corporate cultures treat an employee lying down during work hours as a productivity problem requiring justification. Japan's version treats that employee as someone who will be more useful in 90 minutes than without the rest, which is what the research has always said, and built a room around that rather than a policy against it. The room is usually booked. Platform screen doors. The barriers between the train platform and the tracks that only open when a train is present are standard at most major Japanese rail stations. Their effect on platform safety is dramatic enough that their absence in most Western transit systems reads, after you've spent time with the alternative, as a strange, ongoing choice. They prevent falls. They allow air conditioning in underground platforms because the space is now sealed from the tunnel. They improve punctuality because boarding happens in a controlled environment rather than across an open platform of people trying to self-organize. Every transit system in the world knows the data on this. Most of them are still considering it. Shinrin-yoku. Shinrin-yoku translates roughly as forest bathing. Slow, deliberate time in forested environments with attention on sensory experience rather than pace or distance. It's been a recognized health practice in Japan since the early 1980s. Physicians can recommend it as part of a treatment plan. Japan didn't just observe that people feel better after time in forests. It researched why, quantified the effect, built a network of certified trails with trained guides, and integrated the practice into healthcare in a way that lets it be recommended rather than merely suggested. The forest was always there. Japan decided it counted as infrastructure. Freshness timers on conveyor belt. Sushi. The revolving conveyor belt sushi format Japan invented has evolved well past the simple circulating belt most people know. Modern kaiten sushi restaurants run per-plate freshness monitoring that tracks how long each plate has been moving, alerts staff when a plate exceeds its threshold, and triggers removal automatically. Hundreds of individual items moving through the space simultaneously, each one tracked without additional staff attention. The system scales without compromising the standard. Japan took something that naturally produces inconsistencies at scale and built the monitoring layer that makes scale and quality achievable at the same time. Walking school bus routes. In most Japanese elementary school districts, children walk to school in organized neighborhood groups along fixed routes, supervised by a rotating schedule of community volunteers. It's called Todan, the school commute group, and it runs as standard educational infrastructure, not a parent-organized activity that someone has to keep organizing. Children get daily physical activity built into the routine without anyone scheduling it separately. Neighborhood adults stay in regular contact with the kids around them. Peer relationships form across year groups. Road safety is maintained by adult presence without any transport budget. Japan decided the school commute was a designed experience rather than a logistics problem to be solved with vehicles, and built community infrastructure around that. It's been running continuously since the post-war period. Thermal imaging at building entries. Fever detection at building entries. Thermal cameras displaying a real-time heat map of anyone walking in, flagging temperatures above a threshold, was standard in many Japanese hospitals and public buildings before COVID made it briefly ubiquitous elsewhere. After restrictions lifted, most countries removed their installations. Japan kept them where they still made sense. Hospitals, care facilities, places where protecting vulnerable people from respiratory illness is a permanent concern rather than a temporary response to a specific event. The cameras require no interaction from the person being scanned. They create no bottleneck. They add 0 seconds to entering a building. Japan treated infectious disease screening as building infrastructure rather than emergency response. The infrastructure existed before the emergency. What that gap looked like in early 2020 was visible to anyone paying attention. Shokunin. There's no clean translation for this word, which is probably why it never fully crossed over. Shokunin describes someone who has dedicated their working life to mastering a single craft to a depth that most professional frameworks don't have language for. Not an expert. Not a specialist. Someone for whom the pursuit of mastery is a complete life philosophy, expressed through the daily refinement of work that most observers would consider already excellent. The ramen chef who has made the same bowl for 40 years and is still adjusting it. The sushi master who spent a decade learning only how to prepare rice before being permitted to touch fish. The tatami craftsperson who considers a piece of work inadequate if it can't be assessed positively a century after completion. What Japan built with this tradition is a cultural framework in which the depth of commitment to craft is itself the value, not the output, not the income, not what anyone else thinks of it. Just the ongoing question of whether yesterday's version of the work was actually as good as it could have been. Most countries export the products this tradition produces. The tradition itself, the idea that this is a legitimate way to build an entire working life around one thing pursued without ceiling, is the part worth importing. And I think it's the idea underneath everything else on this list. The heated pavement, the freshness timer, the hinge on the train seat. All of it shares the same basic move. Someone looked at something ordinary, decided the existing version wasn't as good as it could be, and cared enough about that gap to close it. That's the Shokunin instinct applied to everything. Not a craft, a posture toward the world. I still move 3 inches to the left when I hear a chime, even in train stations where nobody else does it, which is a slightly embarrassing thing to admit, but it's also probably the most honest thing I can say about how these ideas actually work. They get into you before you realize what's happening. None of what I described tonight required exceptional resources or technology that didn't exist elsewhere. The button in the bathroom, the shelf near the exit, the hinge on the seat. Small things. Things that required someone to notice the existing version wasn't quite right and decide that was worth doing something about. That combination, noticing, caring, actually doing, is harder to export than any of the objects. But it seems worth trying. Subscribe, and we'll keep finding the places where someone already asked the question and built the answer. See you in the next one.